Unmuting now. Hopefully all of our audio goes out tonight.
That'd be fantastic.
Welcome back to Come and Brew It Radio, coming to you from Texas Brewing Inc. in Haltom City, Texas. You can find us on the web at txbrewing.com and be sure to share on Facebook.
Did you really
on
just mess that up?
I did mess that up. I've been doing that for a long time.
So
Sure to follow us on Facebook and share with all your friends.
In this episode, we have our local BJCP Grand Master II back in studio with us to help discuss the Jovaru Lithuanian Farmhouse yeast from Omega Yeast. He was in when we had a recent call with Omega co-founder Lance Shaner about their Kveik yeasts and has since brewed up a couple more traditional batches to try their new Jovaru strain. Plus, we have a West Coast style IPA fermented with Jovaru to find out how it might work in something less traditional. And tonight we'll also have another call with a longtime patron, Will Kimmins, about some beers he recently sent our way. And we're going to get into a discussion about English miles, see if we might be able to reverse engineer a commercial example.
Before we get started, please be sure to check out our Patreon account to help support the show. Every little bit counts, and if you visit patreon.com/Come and Brew It Radio, we have a variety of options for you to help keep the show going, get involved and improve it. Also, every live show will have a giveaway for all our patrons, and at the end of each month, which should be tonight, we'll be doing a monthly product giveaway for all our $5, $10, and $20 patrons. I'm Nigel.
I'm Greg.
I'm James.
Stubby.
I'm Mikey, and I messed up.
Yes, you did.
He's gone forever and he comes back and
Can't
messes
believe
up.
it.
Now stand in the corner, think
Man.
about what you did.
I'm unimportant.
Brandon, come back, please.
Yeah.
Brandon, we miss you.
Brandon's out murdering Bambi, I think, or
Yeah,
something.
again.
Chopping out
Again, yeah.
penises, he says.
Jumping out
You know,
of
you
penises.
take a boy out of California and he moves to Texas and he goes deer hunting.
He goes murdering deer.
It's doing something to
But
him.
is he
now.
going to bring us
Yikes.
some meat back? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know if I want his meat.
I don't want his meat.
Wow.
He could be out cooking some Nutri up, you know.
That's true.
Keep it
Says
real
the guy
first,
from
James.
Louisiana. You know.
Hey.
Eat some opossum too.
Yeah, whatever it takes. You know.
Opossum.
Just blend it all together. Why do you think we call it jambalaya?
Oh man, so roadkill Elia.
Hey,
There you
yeah.
go.
Delicious.
Awesome.
So, recent happenings when I was putting this together, I can't think of. Has anything
Man.
happened since last week when we talked?
we had like Christmas and shit.
Christmas.
I mean, yeah.
No, I don't think I saw any big news.
No.
This is odd because that's typical.
There's been shit happening constantly, but not this week.
it's just Christmas that happened.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Everything stopped for it. Yeah. Beer world.
Including the breweries. There's only like one or two of them that open I wanted to go to because I actually had a day off. You know.
What's that like?
I know, right?
Nice.
That's what that was like, man. So normally, you know, Austin and I we work till a half day on Christmas Eve, and we're like, hey, where can we go? Because it's kind of like our tradition. We always find some place or bar to go to. Hell, man, there wasn't even any damn bars open and no brew.
Really?
I guess
Christmas Eve?
I guess the earliest a brewery opened up was Hop Fusion. They opened up at 4. So you know, I sat around for 2 hours and then went to the bar. and then I hooked up with Alex. You guys remember from a few of the episodes ago that does the New England IPAs from Turning Point.
Yeah.
God, I always have a hard
yeah.
time remembering
Alex
that. And we met up at Hop Fusion and had a couple beers, and then I let him. I had one of the Bohemian Pils left, or the Urquell's left, and I let them try the side by side. They thought that was pretty amazing. They liked the ones from Urquell better,
Yeah.
that had a little bit of the diacetyl.
Then-
So
Really?
Who's?
yeah, so James, you weren't here last week, but so one of the things that was kind of cool is that what do we have? 12 different
I think so.
Czech lagers that
Quite
I
a
brought
few.
back.
There was a lot.
And so one of the things that we found really interesting was we tried the Pilsner Urquell in a half-liter cans versus what we get here, and there was a noticeable diacetyl note in the stuff that I brought back, but not so much in the stuff we get here. So we were. I wish you would have been here because I would like to have gotten your take on that because I know that's a style that you didn't like for a long time.
Yeah, no, interesting. Yeah, I completely had everything against that style. Didn't like it. Didn't want to drink it. Nothing. And then all of a sudden had this complete 180 and love it and get Pilsner Kell as fast as I can.
Yeah. So what was really strange is that we noticed that the stuff that we got here, and I don't know how old it is. I mean, it was still within their best by date or whatever. But one of the things that we found was really, really interesting is the stuff that we drank here versus what we got that I brought back directly from the brewery in Pilsen was that there was a noticeable diacetyl note that in the stuff from the Czech Republic versus what we get here is a little drier and it seemed to didn't you say I would say that it had a lot more hop flavor and the stuff that we got from so
it was definitely drier than American.
But I also would say that the diacetyl actually kind of it actually blended well with the flavor overall
and mouthfeel and whatnot.
And traditionally they want a little of that diacetyl in there and more for locally. But I wonder if they making something different to ship here.
Yeah, I would be really curious to find that out because but like I said, I don't know how old that beer was. Maybe the flavor hops had dropped out and it changed the overall flavor. So, but I think that there was a noticeable lingering bitterness left over in the stuff that I brought back from the Czech Republic versus what we get here.
Well, I've heard you talk about that, bringing or tasting it there and much more diacetyl there. Mm-hmm. And I've tried multiple ones that are coming here and never ever get that. I'm not very sensitive to diacetyl, but in general, if it was as strong as people say, you'd pick it up. Right. So I just wonder if there is some sense of they're making a different beer, or if it's simply just age and a little bit of time.
That they tasted like two completely different beers to me. They really did.
Well, wouldn't you say that I would say that there was an element to all of those that we tasted last week that had maybe a little bit of diacetyl on them, or some of them more than others.
Yeah, and again, I'm like James. I don't pick it up in great quantities, but yeah, it was certainly there in the fresh stuff.
Yeah, I think especially in the Urquell, I think it was there more prominently. Yeah, and the funny thing is I got this directly at the brewery, and I was in Prague 2 years ago, and I don't remember it having any diacetyl at all in the. Of course, I was drinking out of the bottle, so who knows? Maybe they make something different right there at the brewery than what they export. So who knows? But it was a fun show. I really enjoyed it. And one of the things I really wasn't looking forward to that show that much, but after we busted them out and drank them all, I was like,
well, because you come home talking about just nothing but diacetyl over there.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting, actually. Butter beer or something. I mean, the way you describe it, getting it in served to you,
the world of Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I would say this though, that when you actually go into Prague, there's 40 breweries there, and they're all little bitty tiny, corner stuff. So the stuff that you do get at these little bitty tiny things are typically in your face butter. I mean, it's a boom. Not so much in the big breweries like Pilsner Urquell, Staropramen, and that sort of thing. So, but the Budvar, I mean, it had a little bit.
Yeah, it did.
And I think that was probably everybody's least favorite.
Yeah,
really.
It was
that I brought back from. Everybody's like, it kind of does taste like Budweiser.
That's disappointing.
But anyhow,
it wasn't any better than.
So really. A little bit of backtrack on our episode last week. So if you didn't get to check that out, I think it was kind of interesting because we a little pun intended there, right? But we were really enjoyed that episode. So I think if you're interested in that style, I think it was kind of an eye-opening experience, and hopefully you guys can maybe get a little bit better understanding of that style when you try to brew them yourself.
Yeah.
So
right.
I think ultimately that's our goal when we try to taste these, and fortunately, because I travel to Europe so much, and of course Nigel travels to Europe so much, that we get the opportunity to really try these stuff fresh and be able to compare them to what we get here. So you'll have a noticeable idea of what you're tasting. I mean, because I think that was the biggest thing, and you could probably give a little bit better input. On this, James, is that I think a lot of times the original BJCP descriptions were written for people that go, okay, this is a Rausch beer or a Czech lager that I get here in the United States, and this is what it tastes like, rather than at the source.
Now that was one of the biggest changes that happened in 2015 as the BJCP has learned so much and gone globally. We're seeing so many judges everywhere else, and they're coming back and saying, no, this is absolutely not what we drink here. Because of that, we were drinking old, stale beer here.
Right.
You know, the beer de garde was, tastes like cork. Now, come on, nothing's going to taste like that.
Right.
But we were tasting beers that were old. They're already stale. We weren't getting the fresh, the best examples. And so, there's been a lot of complaints on the new guidelines, but they went miles and miles to get it right. And
Right.
we have judges, we have national, we have master ranked
Right.
judges in Germany now. They're
Okay.
telling us,
Fantastic.
hey, in the Czech Republic, this is what it's supposed to
To
be.
taste like, yeah.
And so all of that history and just time. We've had so many of the upper guys within the BJCP that have had a chance to go travel and go in
Sure.
and taste so much of these beers, and then discover new styles. One of the ones that I'm looking forward to is what we're playing around with tonight with this
Yeah.
Lithuanian. I mean, they've got a whole undiscovered style out there that
None of us know
who knows
about.
what they're doing. We don't know anything of it.
Well, and I think that's the coolest thing about being able to do this is that now that BJCP is kind of spreading to other countries, that we get a little bit better insight of what stuff is supposed to taste like rather than what we receive here. And that's kind of, you guys know, even your fresh stuff locally, if it sits on a shelf, if it sits on a shelf and it sits there for a long time and it's not going to taste like it does at the source or at your local brewery, even though, I love that beer when I go to the brewery and you pick up a 6-pack and it's been sitting on a hot shelf and God knows how long, and you stick it. But you even, quantify that, even expand that more to, oh my God, I drink this in Germany or England, or I drink this in Belgium, and oh my God, it was amazing. And you get over here and it's completely different. And
that beer had to sit on a boat to get here. Not on a shelf for 2 months.
And
like
I
when
can
I brought
assure
that
you,
Guinness.
I can assure you that the problem ain't putting those in reefers because it's too expensive.
Did you say reefer?
Yeah. Not the kind of reefer you like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Refrigeration.
I'll go back into hibernation.
But anyway, so I found it like a really eye-opening experience. Like, for example, when I went to Shrinkerlaw and we brought the Urbach back fresh from the source, and then we tried it side by side. And even the most amazing thing to me is the stuff that we got here was probably 3 or 4 shades darker than the stuff that we got from Germany, and it was completely different. I mean, completely different beer. It completely changed. Whereas, you get this kind of, I don't know, I'm almost say like creosote type flavor. Whereas when you got the stuff directly from Germany, it truly was like kind of a bacon. I mean, bacon type flavor.
You're getting the bad, acrid side of the smoke.
Yeah,
from the time.
rather than the sweet kind of well-rounded smoke.
Yeah, it's still amazing. I could sit in the corner with a whole bottle of it.
Or 2.
Oh man! And every time I've ever been there, the only thing they've ever had and so that's what's really strange there too. And this is really for any place in Germany. A lot of the times when you go to these breweries or whatever, they go, okay, from this date to this date, this is what you get. You get the Urbach, or you get the oak smoke Doppelbock, or you get an Maibach. I mean, it just depends on when you get there. That's what they have.
Yeah, that's something I'm fascinated about.
Isn't it amazing?
You get what they're going to serve, and you're going to enjoy it. You're going to love it.
Right. That's right. So that's really cool about some of that stuff over there. And I hopefully, I know we're kind of bastardizing a lot of the stuff because of the beer movement here, but I really do appreciate a lot of the tradition and brewing tradition that they've been doing over in Europe for thousands of years. So hopefully they don't change that. But
Doubtful. With the way that things have been going, doubtful.
That Stubby's just the tip.
There
Go
you
to Europe and try it at the source. But that's
our
one of the
next
things-
question.
Yeah, we can all do
Now
that.
answered.
Yeah.
No, and I really think this is
Get
something
right on
that I'm really passionate about, and hopefully when we do these beers and we taste them, and try to explain to you guys out there, hopefully we're able to to kind of convey the experience that we're having with these, and maybe conveying to you, the listeners, a little better about what else is out there besides what you're getting here at home.
And what a style needs. I mean, we get a lot of questions and things about what beer was that you drank for this. You know, I asked y'all today about a couple, and it's just, we get questions, we get responses like, what was this that you're trying to look for? Because they're trying to repeat or find something to give, you know, that beer life at home.
Well, and ultimately, I think, you know, Greg, I think what we're trying to do is shed light on you know, because we all know what New England IPAs taste like. We know what West Coast IPAs taste like. We know what, you know, that sort of thing. So I think a lot of our listeners and homebrewers in general are trying to look at new or broaden their horizons and being able to learn about new different flavors and techniques and yeasts and hops and I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to drink the best beer possible, right? And so when you're discovering these new different flavors and new different techniques and all of this different stuff, I think it only makes you a better brewer.
Right. Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. You got to be able to get your access to them, or at least hear about them. It's better than reading about them all the time, which was a lot of the original style guidelines, you know.
So
True.
throw butter in your Pilsners, everybody.
No.
If you really want to be German.
Well,
Or Czech.
well, and that's one thing, you know, I don't think you'll ever get any of that well, if you get that in a Czech, in a German lager, there's a problem.
Right.
I mean, it shouldn't.
I
be
meant
in there.
Czech. I apologize for my racism.
All right.
So-
Anyway, unsolicited answers to internet
questions.
questions. And we don't even have the soundboard anymore.
Oh,
Just
well.
like,
There you go.
Wow.
That was unsolicited.
That was totally unsolicited.
All right, so I think my beer keeps getting infected. I've been brewing for about a year now, and I've noticed a similar trend in taste and over-carbonization and gushing after about a month or so after bottling. The beer tastes okay 1 or 2 weeks after bottling, but after that it gets an off-plasticky taste. I know it can be a litany of reasons, but I'm thinking some bacteria in my siphon or bottling tubing. I PBW and sanitize everything. However, from what I've read, bacteria can still linger on the equipment. Now, can I soak everything in some kind of special sanitizer, or should I just replace everything I think might be infected?
Yes.
Yes.
throw away all that plastic.
And
Yeah.
rebuy
Yeah.
from Stubby's Texas Brewing.
Well, you know, the first thing I saw when I read, you know, plasticky, you know, that's either phenolic of some kind from an infection, or maybe he's not filtering his water.
Yeah.
And, you know, and we've got on here the
Chlorophenol.
chlorophenols. So
That's
maybe
a big deal, man.
Yeah, I mean, a carbon filter, a simple carbon filter, on any, you know, if your water tastes good, use a carbon filter and use it for brewing. It's very simple.
Well,
Would that not affect? He says he gets good tasting beer for 1 or 2 weeks. So if it was that, it
Plus
would.
he has the
chlorophenol is more
gushing.
than likely a
Right.
infection problem, I would say. Would
Right.
you say, James?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
No, it's
Yeah,
some-
when he
something's not going
mentions
right when he's bottling
The
it.
gushing part of it, that's the part
That's
that...
that's what
good-
clues me into
Yeah.
probable infection.
But that is a common thing with even new brewers that do not filter the water and just use tap water. If your municipality is using chlorine, that is a possibility that your yeast can actually emphasize that and produce chlorophenols. But one of the things I've talked to sometimes too, when people bring in beer that have this plasticky Band-Aidy flavor too, is a lot of times I have guys that are brewing in their backyard and they just using a regular old water hose too.
Mhm.
I mean, just what a water tastes like. When you were a kid and you drank out of a water hose and had that.
Man, that tastes good down South Louisiana. I'm telling you, that's all I did.
So that's
Tastes-
what's wrong.
it tastes
with
good
I'm about to
before
say,
work,
now
too.
we know.
Tasted good in the summer when you're 10 years old, for sure.
But you know what I'm talking about. It has that kind of plastic flavor. So if you guys are brewing and using a water hose, make sure you go out and get an RV water safe drinking hose, because it does make a difference.
Yeah.
And they're not very expensive. I think actually.
Don't
they're
leave it
not
out in the sun either,
Yeah.
filled with water.
Or do what I do and just go to your Kroger and buy bottled water. That's just...
Yeah, I've done that too.
That's all I do. Every time I brew, that's all I do.
Yeah, and it's a good idea. I would say though, however, we learned this recently that it's not a bad idea to, if you're using a bottled water source, to send that water off to get tested, because
Absolutely.
we were absolutely shocked because we had some local water that we were using to brew with, and I was like, we just thought, oh, it's really soft, and it's great. Holy crap, it was hard as shit, man. And we were like, oh my God, we're actually using this to brew with. So it's not even a bad idea to actually, if you're brewing with some local, water source or bottled water company, send that stuff off to kind of get it tested. And go back to our water episode, because I think that's a really eye-opening deal
Use
too.
Ward Labs. They're really good. They did us really well.
Yeah, and we even talked about this earlier with Nigel at the beginning of the show. We were talking about you guys that we weren't sure that you got your water correct on this last brew that you guys just did.
Here's that beer we were discussing.
Oh,
and you thought that everything turns out really hoppy and weird or something, and that's kind of the problem too. I think when you're using you're trying to adjust for water, the water always changes. So you can't, like you said, you can't take stuff out of the water. You can only add back to it. So let's just say if your sodium was really high, this week, or more than normal, or what the last time you had it tested, it might be, and you add some more sodium in there by using, calcium bicarbonate or something like that, it make your sodium content go away. It might make your beer taste funky. So there is something to be said for you're making your water from scratch and building from like RO water, but and I do think that your water chemistry really does have a huge impact on your overall flavor. If you're trying to take it from a 35-point beer to a 42-point beer, I think there is something there. But you can also screw a beer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had IPAs come out way too hoppy, bitter, because of that hardened water. So, like the beer that he's passing around now is
wet
a
newspaper
U.S. lager, and I've had the mine came out clean, malty with the profile of the yeast, but bitter. So it's really more like an American Pilsner.
I get like wet cardboardy.
Well,
this one is not that beer. Like, this is totally different beer than that one.
So
and there's yeast differences too.
So when I came in and spoke to you guys this evening, I was like, this is the worst beer I've ever made. It was soapy. It was nasty. I don't get that now. Now it's probably because my palate's been cleaned by all these beers I've already had.
Yeah.
So
I just don't like that. What's the aroma? So I get this aroma a lot. It's like this. I want to say
tastes green to me.
Geraniol.
Yeah.
That's that. The geraniol. It's the same thing that's giving that soapy note.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's in there. This one too.
Is that from the esters, or could be an infection?
Could be the esters. Could be the hops. More than likely, I don't think there'd be an infection. I don't think there's anything.
No.
Over drying that. It could be something with the water is pulling something more out of the hops.
Use the Mexican lager yeast on this one.
Yeah.
I like the flavor more than I like the aroma.
Right.
I don't like either.
I don't think it's as bad, like I say, as what I described to you. Now that my palate has changed,
it could be the OxyClean that you kind of left in the water before you rinsed. And
well, that's chemicals we use, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to rinse it, by the way.
Oh,
see, I don't think the flavor.
He just pours it right on the palate.
I just don't like the aroma at all. The aroma smells funky.
And it may just be that it's green, because it's not that. It's a lager that's not that old.
It simply could be that.
Yeah,
no doubt. That could fade.
I've had some that had that similar greenish kind of character that did fade after a few months in the keg, and they cleared up more too.
I think the flavor's okay. It doesn't bother me. I think this one is this yours. This is your version of the one Greg shared last.
Yeah.
This one doesn't taste bitter like yours did.
Yeah, mine's strongly more bitter than this.
Yeah, for sure.
Mine's Pilsner bitter for sure versus American lager.
I guess
standard American
But
lager.
they were the same.
Yeah.
Say more.
Same yeast.
So no,
different yeast.
And,
I use
I use less OxyClean.
Okay, so the next question here is 10-gallon brewers. What do you use for temperature control? I know that professional brewers run glycol chillers for temperature control, but I don't think that's necessary for the sizes I am brewing. Whoa.
Yeah, he's got a long one.
It's on the back side of this page, and
Bragger.
right here is
Whoa,
after several 10-gallon batches going into a chest freezer, I know one day I'm going to either pull a back muscle in the worst possible way, tip over my chest freezer, or drop my fermenter. I'm not in bad shape, but I'm also not a big dude, so pulling that that weight, 100 pounds, out of a chest freezer is really awkward. Refrigerators and stand-up freezers don't seem like they'd be big enough. Often have multiple batches fermenting. I was thinking of building an insulated box with a little AC unit and bypass the thermostat and use something else for temperature control, or maybe gutting a mini fridge to use the chiller out of that and running a fan to circulate the air. Alternatively, I could just continue to use a chest freezer, but use the CO2 to transfer.
Okay, let me stop you there. Right there, bingo. That's your answer. Use the CO2, push it out, and make some fittings that can go on your fermenters that will hold the pressure. And I've been doing the same thing. I ferment 10-gallon batches in a chest freezer, and my back is paying on. I use a keg. I pull the spear out, and then I put a fitting on there that I can just push it out. And I'm getting to the point to where I'll even pump straight into that fermenter, so I'm not lifting it up in there, because 10 to 12 gallons, what's that, 80 pounds, 85 pounds minimum,
plus
a
keg weight.
a 60-pound keg. Yeah, it's a heavy thing, and
I'm
it's
curious,
going to kill our backs.
What's he using? What's his fermentation vessel?
Yeah, and,
it sounds like it's either keg or some sort of large, which is
Carboy?
typically going to be 10 gallons though.
Yeah,
10
but
gallon
10.
carboy.
I mean, he's talking about a 10-gallon
Single
he's not talking
10-gallon
about
batch
singles.
fermentation.
I mean, he's
is
not
what
talking about double carboy.
Right.
I have a 10-gallon fermenter. I have a fridge that sits out on my patio. It is big enough and I still have the shelf in there. It still holds. I have a 10-gallon Speedle, and it fits in there. It's a pain to get up in there. I can do it by myself because I'm only lifting it, 16, 18 inches in and out of the chest freezer. But for transfer, I got to get somebody else to get it up on a counter.
yeah, no, and that's why go back to the CO2, because number one, CO2, you're pushing it. You're gonna have a nice CO2 blanket. You're gonna reduce any chances of oxidation drastically. Immediately once you get to that point. So there's so many benefits to pushing with CO2, and CO2 is cheap. So I mean, if you have that option, don't pass go. That's the one.
Well, James, I chose this question specifically because I knew you'd be here, and I know about you and your kegs.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, it's like, I know you do something with this to make it work out for you, and I'm trying to picture that, and I was pretty sure you'd said the CO2 thing. But I also know that, I don't think he does 10s, but I can think of, Stan. He's got back problems. A lot of homebrewers do, or they can't do the weight. They get something like a pulley set, a hoist.
Yeah.
And it's movable hoist, whatever it is, and they have it in their situation to where they can put it over that, pick it up, drop it down, and it's never any more than pulling a chain.
I know.
Yanking the chain.
Craig Gilbreth had repurposed. He found a Hoyer lift. It's what we use in the medical field to move patients, and it'll hoist up just over his the edge, the lip of his chest freezer, so he can lift his. He was doing 10-gallon batches.
Oh man, this is freaking awesome.
And just using a Hoyer lift, so it's just a simple pulley system that you could build. But if you've got stainless steel, if you're doing a keg, if you're doing any of the newer stainless steel fermenters, most of the conicals out there now will take 2 to 4 psi. That's the max, but that's all you need to push that beer.
And, and if you're pushing it, and you have, like I said, you reduce oxygen, but when you use these lifts, all you're doing is stirring up your yeast bed. They make some really nice rack and canes that can go on your on a keg or your fermenters that just will push through with ease, leave almost all of your slurry behind, and save yourself a lot of trouble.
Well, or you can do like what I've done here at the shop is we have 2 little refrigerators. I paid $75 a piece. They're not a full size refrigerator. I would say they were full size, but they're not like a big refrigerator. They're probably
they're more like apartment size.
Apartment size refrigerator, right? And then
medium.
They're like a medium sized refrigerator. But they're not like a full size house refrigerator, I would say. Maybe an office or apartment.
They're slim and they're probably 5 feet 5 inches type of tall.
Yeah, and they're probably like 5 or 6 foot. Yeah, probably 5 foot or so. But I built a false, or I wouldn't say a false bottom, but a bottom in it, so it would reach over the compressor hump, right?
Yeah.
And then took the the whole door assembly with all of the racks and all that shit on the door, and just put in some what do they call it? PRV.
CRP.
No, PRV. I think it's
P. Some. Yeah.
LSD.
no, it's
QRSTUV.
FRP. Excuse me.
FRP.
XYD.
Yeah, fiberglass reinforced, whatever, something. But it's the same shit.
Exactly.
Same shit you see in the restrooms where guys pee all over the walls. You know, you can wipe it clean, right?
PRV.
Yeah, PRV. No, that's pressure relief valve.
It's FRP.
FRP. But anyway,
It's fiberglass reinforced
but I
plastic.
can fit 4 buckets or for monsters in that same little refrigerator. So
OMG.
yeah.
Well, and one of the things, like when I
Nigel just won the podcast.
That's 20 gallons.
when I talk to people about doing multiple fermentations, one of the reasons I bought the 5.1 or 5.2 cubic foot chest freezer that I bought is I didn't want to have 4 different beers fermenting in the same vessel, because what if I've got 4 different beers at different stages?
Right.
That's the advantage of having that single.
Well,
but it's harder for us here at the shop.
yeah.
And I realize it's an expense.
So
Here's one of the things that I would say, though. I don't mean to interrupt there, Nigel, but
I think you did.
I know I did. But, but I really wanted to make this point, because I'll forget in a second, because I had a few beers already. But one of the things that I mean, when I started brewing 10 gallons a long time ago, before I had the invention of like the grain father and stuff like that, where I brewed more often, but I used to brew a lot of beer because it was easier for me to set up my big system and brew at one time, right? But I didn't necessarily want 15 gallons of the same damn beer.
No.
So
But now you split it up and
I would split it up
yeah.
in 3 5-gallon batches or 2 5-gallon batches, and maybe pitch different yeast or dry hop differently.
Yes.
So I had 2 different variations of the same wort, right? And so to me, I never really wanted to ferment 10 gallons of the same beer unless I was
Really
doing the
into
same-
that one damn beer.
Yeah, or if I had a buddy of mine that I was splitting it with,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
and then I'd want the same beer. But I don't know, even
You're
if
not
I-
going to get a 10-gallon keg necessarily,
I mean,
for
they
that
have
full
those.
10 gallon.
They do have those. They're expensive.
like
10
10-gallon
cornies.
cornies, yeah, you can't hardly find those.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I mean,
Hard
I
to
can
find.
think there's, other than Iron Mash and Martin House competitions, I think I've only brewed maybe 1 or 2 10-gallon batches on my own
Yeah.
that were not
really?
for competition.
You communist. You can make
I-
a 20-gallon batch.
I do.
You can. I mean,
I mean-
I've got 4 fermentation chambers at the house. They
Yeah,
use.
right.
I mean, now I brew fairly regularly, as everybody knows, but one of them is traditionally used for cold storage. So it's either
Yeah.
keeping bottled beers, keeping kegs,
lager.
or cold crashing, lagering, whatever. Yeah. The rest of them I can fit, depending on the carboys I use. I can fit 2 carboys in each one of them. 2 of them are upright fridges, and one of them is chest freezer,
Right.
a small chest freezer. But with the experiments that we've been doing on the show, I've been doing 8-gallon batches, so I've been using a 3-gallon carboy as well, so that's easy to fit in.
Yeah.
I thoroughly recommend just getting fridges. Craigslist.
Well,
Craigslist. I've never ever paid over $50.
I was gonna say I've not paid
Yeah.
over
A lot-
60. So
Never have paid
yeah.
over $50.
And if you
I've
have lots
gotten-
of friends that are
Yeah.
out on the lookout and they know you're a home brewer, a lot of times people would just say, "Hey, so and so's got a fridge. If you go pick it up, it's free."
yeah,
I mean,
Uh-huh.
I've had so many of them donated up
Yeah.
here. The 2 refrigerators I'm talking about, I bought at some kind of auction thing, and I bought 3 of them for $75.
I've even had
each.
some from work that were they just had them in storage, and they're like, "Oh, we need to get rid of this storage, so here's a free fridge." If you
So
want.
if you ever walk in a true hardcore home brewer, you'll know he's a
You
home
can get
brewer
'em
right
cheap.
away when you walk in his garage. and he
Fridge
has
collection.
3 or
Yeah.
4 refrigerators.
You can get them cheap,
I've got-
and then spend the money on a temperature control, and then-
including the fermentation chambers, the kegerator, and the little wine fridge. I've got 6 fridges or
Yeah.
freezers in my garage.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is that I think, though, I think this is what I would say is missing the point. I have a lot of people ask me this all the time. Well, I'm doing 10-gallon batches. I need a 10-gallon fermenter. And I'm like,
no.
No.
No, you need-
Experiment.
Not
Split.
unless
You
you
need
want
to
this.
experiment. That's
Yeah, not
exactly
unless
right.
you want the same
Split that
beer,
sucker up.
because how else are you
Split the
going to
batch.
learn? You know, even use different yeast strains, use different hops or dry hopping or whatever. It's amazing. You can take I thought this was a really cool deal that St. Arnold's did a couple years ago. They did their movable yeast series.
Yeah.
And what they did was they had their normal lineup, like their Kolsch and their whatever. And I think this probably started out as a screw up. But they took like their Kolsch and they
Yeah.
put it on a hef yeast.
Yeah, they
hef
did.
yeast.
That was with their lawnmower. And that was their Kolsch.
They call it the weed whacker.
Exactly.
And so I thought that was a really those are polar opposite yeasts.
It's a lot of fun.
But you got two completely different beers with the same wort, and you really didn't have to change much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think at the end of the day, unless you've got a bit like a collective or something, or you have multiple friends brewing together, who the hell wants 10 or 15 gallons of the same beer?
Yeah.
That's just not me.
Unless it's smoked beer, of course.
Well, even
Or
the
English.
smoke
With
beer.
Cherry Creek in it. Yeah.
But even the smoke beers, you could change. You could change it up a little bit.
Hang on, didn't you try and drink 15 gallons of Landlord when you was in England?
Yes, I did. I tried really hard, and I just I couldn't stay out of the pisser, man. I kept having to go pee.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong. If you do want 10 of the same, split it, use the same yeast, pitch it on both, and then when it's time to
Right.
keg it, blend them back together.
You can do that too. Yeah.
I find myself doing that sometimes, especially if I'm making a bigger batch. As I bring them back together, I'll just blend them. I mean, both fermentations going to be somewhat a little bit different, even though they're in the exact same box.
Right.
They're the same temperature. Everything's the same, with the exception one's probably got a little more oxygen than the other, and one's probably got a little more yeast than the other, and which will make a difference in your fermentation.
You should have Will's number. Will Kimmins.
Where's it at?
You told me you had it.
No, I didn't.
I
have
asked
it.
you earlier. You told me you had it.
No, I didn't.
Damn it.
8675309.
Hey, Jesse. Jesse, you there? Oh, that's Jesse girl. Never mind.
Hey, Jesse.
what was the name? What was the name of the gal that was in that song? I don't know. Anyway.
Jenny.
Jenny.
I've got your
Hang on,
number.
hang on.
Jenny.
That's the wrong Jenny and the wrong songs.
Jenny.
Oh, shit. We better drink a little more.
Where's
Try
his
that.
number, dude? I don't see it.
I'm sending it to you because I thought you had it because you said you had it.
No, I said I didn't have it.
You're trying to use technology around here? That's
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, let's see here.
All right, I've just sent you it.
I think haven't we had William? Whoa,
Yeah, he's
that
called
was
before.
really
There it
loud.
is. Yeah, he's called before. We've talked to him.
Okay, I thought we'd had him on
If
the
you're
show
listening,
before.
Will, here it comes. Be prepared.
Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can hear us.
Oh.
Do we have notes on here about him?
The green sheet.
Oh, just
Bring-
the one, just
bring
the one
you
comment.
back.
Hello.
Hey, Will.
Hello.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey,
Can
how's
you
it
hear
going,
us?
man?
It's all right.
All right, awesome, fantastic, man.
Are the kids in
Welcome
bed?
back on the show.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Yeah, the kids are in bed. Fortunately, since we got that time difference between y'all and us, it's about I guess it's about 25 after 9 here. So kids have been stashed for the evening.
Awesome. Well, fantastic, man. So we have a couple beers here that you made for us, and we're gonna drink them up and talk about them a little bit. Do you want to tell us about which one are we drinking
Looks
first?
like we're about to start with the cider.
The cider, the big 750 Belgian bottle.
That's it.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Will?
So that's it's a really easy recipe. It's probably like I think James Lalonde said a few episodes back. It's kind of like making Kool-Aid. So what I did was I found my local hippie grocery mart with all the fancy organic stuff and whatnot. Got 6 gallons of unfiltered apple cider from it. If I can, I usually try to go to like a orchard or something and get that because I brew this every year for Christmas as a Christmas gift for folks usually. But 6 gallons of unfiltered cider. I add 4 pounds of light brown sugar when I get it. So I heat the 6 gallons up to 140 degrees. Add the sugar and just you want it hot enough that the sugar will dissolve. cool it back down to yeast pitch and temp. For that, I just use Premier Blanc champagne yeast. And then for 5 gallons, so it's basically 1 tablespoon per gallon of mulling spice. So, Stubby, I know that's probably going to be your favorite drink this evening.
Woohoo! Smells great.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm going for, is that that spice note in the aroma before you even start drinking.
Nigel, you get some?
I got some, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic, man.
Hey, Will, where are you at?
So I was in North Carolina, but we just moved about, I don't know, 2 months ago. So now we're up in Maryland.
Okay. And you're able to get fresh pressed cider there, local?
I was in North Carolina. There's an orchard right up the road from where we live.
That's awesome.
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, here I got to scout it out a little bit.
But I'm kind of curious. You said there was hippies in Maryland?
Oh yeah, man. There's tons of them.
That's awesome.
Just ask for the local organic food mart. And
All right.
It's instantaneous as soon as you get there.
Fantastic.
Man, this tastes like Christmas.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. That's the response that I've had from folks. It's also kind of powerful. So I give it to folks. It comes out at just about 11.5% when you get done with it.
Now you tell us.
Hey, man, you know what, Will? I got to say, man, I typically do not like mulling spices, but I think this is done well and done
We'd
right.
never heard that before.
You will never hear me say that. I really, truly think it's
Next
a
thing you
really
know,
nice
he's gonna say
blend. You
likes
get that
it.
tart, and
Mead.
I think the spice is actually
Right.
kind of,
And not too much of the tannic quality that often comes with cider. It's very smooth.
Yeah,
Very
I think the actual mulling spice is kind of like mellow the other like tart characteristics of cider. So I think it's really nice. So
Yeah,
you
Yeah,
did
they
a good
definitely
job.
do.
At 11%, that's going to get people in trouble.
I'd like to try that
Yeah,
warm.
yeah.
Well, and they kind of balance out a little bit. I mean, they give it a little
Yeah.
bit of that bitterness, something to balance out a little bit of the apple sweetness. I mean,
Yeah,
it tastes like an apple pie without being sweet,
yeah.
Right.
And it's
but yet
so
it's not super dry.
so if you ever go to Frankfurt, that's kind of their thing is the Apfelwein.
Oh, yeah.
And it's god awful. It's absolutely atrocious, man. It tastes terrible, and you know the funny thing is even the Germans think it's funny when like Americans or somebody else buy it, or they're like,
Oh yeah.
what do you think of the apple cider? And you're like, Apfelwein, and I'm like, it's not so. He goes, drink a second one, it'll be much better.
Yeah, right.
Because they're like 10%,
the
you know. Yeah. So anyway, but this is really nice, man. You did a really good job of that.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I'll take all the feedback I can get on stuff.
James, do you have anything you want to add to anything about cider side of things with this?
No, it's very well done. It's nice, super clean.
Cool.
I think the spices are done well. They're not over the top. One thing that anybody that wants to start diving into spices, I'll tell you, don't ever spice the entire batch. I don't know if you did that, Will, but only spice a portion of it, 2-3 gallons, and then start blending them back together. It's easy to spice the other half of it exactly the same if you find that it was perfect. But most of the time, you're going to find your spices are too strong. And so by blending it back together is really how you can kind of manage those spices, because they can change hour to hour. We do a big spice competition here in Fort Worth, and we find that the judging one weekend, and then the next weekend we have a big old party, and those beers change drastically in 1 week's time just because of the spices. So like I said, I think it's clean. It's not overly dry, which is nice, but yet it's not sweet. The spices balance it out very well.
Actually, I think
it's got a crispness.
this is odd for me to say, but I think these mulling spices actually make it more drinkable.
Oh, it does, absolutely.
Yeah,
Because you know it kind of blends that acidity out a little bit. So
Really
good
softens
job,
it.
man. Because I'm not a mulling spice fan. I think you mentioned that earlier. So
So,
I
so
think you
Will,
did a great job.
did you brew this in North Carolina or since you've moved?
I brewed that batch of it. I did in North Carolina. I got another
Okay.
batch of it that just went into the bottle that I brewed up here, but the taste is virtually the same. We'll see once it's all carbonated up if it comes out with truly the same finish on it or not.
Okay, because did you have to use a different sauce for your apples with Move, or how did you get around that?
Yeah, I did. So the batch that y'all are drinking came from an orchard in North Carolina that they had, you know how you get the go pick your own apple thing that everybody gets into in the August time frame. Well, this orchard also does, for the ones that aren't necessarily picking material, they'll do fresh pressed cider. So I just went and got, my 6 gallons of cider straight from the orchard for that.
I'm so jealous.
I'm super
that's
jealous.
awesome. So the next batch will be the tester, right? Because that's the end of your resource for now, at least, unless you can ship it in from North Carolina.
Yeah, it really will. We'll see how it goes. I'm almost more nervous about going to a new orchard than I would be just getting something off the shelf at, your higher end grocery stores, because you get that the same way hops change between locations. You get differences in apples, kind of the same way. So we'll see what we get.
Brandon does ciders quite frequently, and Brandon just goes to the Walmart and buys the Musselman's apple cider for, I don't know, it's $4 or $5 a gallon. So, and he has really good results with that. So, it can be done.
Yeah, I've done it with just the good old fashioned Walmart Great Value brand, and it comes out fine. Because a lot of what you find with ciders is it's what you do after fermentation.
Right.
Usually it comes out so dry it strips everything out. So you basically just have alcohol, and then what you do after fermentation gives it all of its character. Unless you had a yeast that really gave it a lot of character in the fermentation. Most of that apple character is gone, so you've got to, for a cider, you have to do something to bring some of that character back in.
Oh, fair enough. The thing I kind of liked about the stuff I ended up getting this year is it all comes in 1 gallon glass containers.
Oh, yeah.
So I made this batch, and now I've got 6 1-gallon fermenters.
Nice.
for the future sitting around.
So, and that's where as you're wanting to Dr. Jekyll a little bit, is you can start using those as your spice vessel, and only spice a gallon of it, and then you start blending them back together. Intentionally over spice that gallon, and then bring it back. Just take a couple of ounces and find out where the blend is, and then bring it back. So you're not leaving it up to chance. When you spice the whole thing, you're leaving it up to chance. Trust me, I've already overshot it with cinnamon one time on a mead, and it was the same thing. There's nothing you can do after the fact.
You can never take it out.
No, but if you
got some of that, yeah.
If you take it like in a quart jar. I just was playing around with some chipotles and only put a quart of it, but I can go 6 quarts to 1 of the chipotle, and I still have a ton of it to blend it back down to a level that I want. So as you're playing with those, you'll find, and I think you'll be even happier with it, because you'll get your consistency there.
Right.
Today's batch, you may use 1 gallon to 2 gallons of your base. And then tomorrow it may be, 3 gallons. You never know where it may come, depending on how they take to the spices, what the temperature is. There's so much that can work with spices that just, like I said, don't leave it to chance.
Yeah.
So, Will, we're going to move on to your Belgian triple now. I've got your sheets here. Everybody's got a glass full. I'm going to go ahead and give James the, Yeah?
I just said, oh, yeah, because I had a sip.
That's what it is. I'm going to give James your score sheets as well, if he wants to look at them and have any comment on it.
So you entered this into NHC this past year, correct?
Yeah, I did,
Gotcha.
but I didn't plan properly. So it had finished primary, finished secondary, and I mailed it off a week into bottle conditioning. So it was young when they judged it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
How
How old is this beer now?
It'd be almost a year, right? Or right at a year?
Yeah, I brewed it in brew day for that was February 18th of this year.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So it's got almost a year on it.
Yeah.
It's got to be a totally different beer than the one that you sent in.
For sure.
And it really is.
I would say that I still get some alcohol notes in there, a little bit of heat.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's some heat. There's some perfumey notes to it.
Yeah.
Overall, fits right well within the style.
So Will, this is kind of one of my beer that's in kind of my wheelhouse. I really brew this one a lot. Tell me a little bit about what you did with your yeast, what yeast you used, and that sort of thing.
So the yeast for that was the Mangrove Jack Belgian.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
Just
it's
the Belgian ale.
strain for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was, very, very basic grain bill. Where I actually got the recipe for it is I do a version of that I put blackberries into the secondary.
Okay.
So it's got a blackberry overnote to it, but I wanted to just go, kind of basic since I was sending it to NHC. So I just didn't add the blackberries to the secondary, for it. So
For
very
this?
basic grain bill. Yeah.
Okay. The one thing I kind of if you've listened to me a lot, one of the things that I always say is that I'm a huge proponent of dry yeast. This is one that I kind of shy away from style wise when it comes to, because I really do like the dry, or I do like the liquid strains of yeast for this particular style. However, I get a really spicy note out of this. It's really, wouldn't you say?
That Belgian ale has it's
is
got
pretty
some character.
spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
well,
has some
and the
spiciness.
triple you want a lot of spiciness, and I think that mango jack yeast, I'm not a fan of it either.
I've never used it.
Yeah,
but it is picking up kind of that saison-y kind
almost
of
a saison, yeah,
spice,
kind of spicy,
that pepperiness to it.
yeah, for sure. But you know what? Some people really like that. Some people like that kind of spiciness. Like one of the local breweries here is beating us up to try to get a brick of this to do their quad with it. So I mean, it is what it is. This is not. I mean, I don't. I think this is a very drinkable beer. I don't. But for me personally, I'd like the spiciness to be a little less for me.
See, and I'm not a big fan of triples because I like the fruity or golden strong. Golden strong and triple are very close to the exact same beer.
Yeah.
Other than spicy.
Just the spicy versus the fruitiness. And I don't know if you have your score sheet close by. I'm looking over at Peter's, which is another grandmaster out there, and his comments are right in line with what I would have said. And then I'll give you some unsolicited feedback on your recipe on that. Is if you notice, he talks about it's got a really sweet malt to it, and it's got a lot of bananas in your esters. So your bananas and your esters are coming from that mangrove jack. I've noticed that out of some of the other mangrove jacks, they do some really good things. This one pulls out a little more banana. You got some Cara Vienna in there. Take that out completely.
Yeah, I would
just
say
your,
that too.
Your Belgian beers don't really need much in the way of crystal malts
Especially
because
malts,
you're
yeah.
using that candy syrup that's giving it a lot of the other sweetness, and you want it to dry out. And I got to tell you, I mean, looking at what these sheets are, I'd probably come in around the same, maybe a little higher because the age has done this beer very well. I would have put this in that 34, 35 range.
I was thinking 32.
But you push it in the 40s if you take out some of that sweetness. Let it to dry out. So
Yeah,
pull that
yeah.
Cara Vienna out and try it again. Don't do anything different. See if you like it. And then, hey, at the end of the day, if you like it better with the Cara Vienna, put it back in. Don't worry about what any judge is trying to tell you. It's how you like to drink it.
We're
Yeah,
we're
dude,
just
I'll drink this with you if you
well,
if all else fails.
and I think ultimately that's when we're giving you feedback, if you like the way it tastes or whatever, that's cool. I mean, when we're giving you feedback, it may be just for you to score better in competition.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that's the difference between a competition beer and a drinking beer, right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a general guideline. We're just talking about
Well,
that, but we all definitely
delicious.
say make the beer you
All
want to
more.
drink.
yeah. I mean,
Oh yeah, and don't worry about I sent this stuff to y'all because if I just wanted this is drinkable, I like this. I got enough, people I can offer free beer to. They'll be like, oh yeah, this is great. Like I send it to you guys so I can get good feedback from people that actually know what they're talking about. So I
That's
value
awesome.
all of it.
Some of us.
It's clean. It's well done. You did a nice job with it.
I think you nail a few of the things that I think is the biggest failures of this style is that first off is that I think even though you may have a little bit of the Cara Vienna malt in there that may give it a little bit of residual sweetness, I do think it's nice, dry, carbonated properly for this particular style. I think that's often kind of missed on this style. It's got to be effervescent to me. It's got to be. It's got to be. And I would always err on the side of overcarbonating this beer rather than undercarbonating it, because if you don't have enough carbonation in it, I think the biggest problem is a lot of times is that it'll taste sweeter than it probably is. So I think you got to have that kind of almost that champagne-like, effervescent, mouthfeel in this particular style. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And most judges will tell you they'd rather have a gusher that they get a little bit of than a flat, weird beer that they get a full glass of. I mean, gushers are okay, unless it's the
the ones that
bacterial
keep on
infected,
Right.
If it's overcarbonated a little bit, that's okay in a composition.
This beer tastes familiar.
So
it ought to.
we're moving on to the next beer,
Yeah.
which we might have to have the ESP that you sent after this just to clean the palate before we actually try the Barroom Hero. But we're moving on to your Minter is coming.
And I'm gonna. I read one of your comments on your recipe sheet about losing some heat on your because you're doing coolers, right?
Yeah, so I'm on a cooler system. I'm doing batch sparge right now just because I haven't built a brew stand to do gravity feed for my fly sparge at the moment. So what had happened was, since we moved, winters in North Carolina are obviously significantly more mild, and it gets colder as you go up the East Coast. So I got here, and when I was in North Carolina, I never had to worry about things like, hey, bring your cooler inside the night before so that the temperature normalizes, and hey, bring your grain inside the night before so the temperature normalizes. So I got out there and I, heated my stuff the way that Beersmith said I should heat it, and lo and behold, I was aiming for, I think, a 154, 155 mash, and I ended up about 149.
Well, I'll tell you what I used to do. I had a cooler mash tun set up, and we're talking Texas, but I still did this in 30-degree weather, and I did it the same way in 100-degree weather in the summer. I had a teapot, and I just filled that teapot on the stove.
Don't get Nigel excited.
I know. I put a teapot on the stove, and I boiled a teapot, and then poured whatever water was in that teapot into the mash tun while I was heating my strike water. And I didn't care what temperature it was. I'm just preheating that cooler. And every time I hit my temperatures exact, and I only lost 1 to 2 degrees over the course of my hour mashes.
All right, two things. One, if I don't stand up, you won't know I'm excited.
He's going to throw a fucking shoe at me.
Secondly, I also brewing coolers, and I preheat mine with a gallon of water at 125 every time.
Yeah,
At least.
Yeah.
So okay, I'm going to step back. I've been chomping at the bit on this one. That 152 to 149, don't worry about it. I don't.
That's close enough.
I completely will be the one to tell you if you're fighting over one temperature of your mash temp, something's not working right. There's no reason that should be overly of concern. There's a range in there. Don't worry about it. But let's step back to this beer. Don't change a thing about it.
Yeah, I think it's great.
You nailed the beer, man.
I'm super excited about this beer. And before we came on, I was like, can people just make regular old beers? We don't need anything with peppermint and chocolate and everything else in this. But I tell you what, you nailed this one. This was absolutely fantastic.
Let me pull the curtain
Best
back a little
peppermint
bit.
beer I've ever had.
Will told me earlier in a text message, or when I said that we were going to be coming on tonight and see if he was available, he said, that porter's not my best work.
Well, so this
It's a thin mint. It's good.
this
You nailed that.
recipe.
Is this our peppermint porter recipe?
Yeah, that's the shop kit. The only thing I changed was instead of the instead of steeping the peppermint leaves for, I think it said an hour to 2 hours at Whirlpool, I left it in there for about 6 because I got folks that were. So this is my Christmas beer this year. Usually what I do is that cider and a 6-pack of whatever I brewed for Christmas is what we give to friends. And
Man, I wish I was on your Christmas list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are.
Well, we are now. Yeah, that's true.
We're drinking some of it now.
Well, I'll tell you the recipe. This is Johnny's recipe, but it's kind of it's based on
It's kind of between a mishmash
Yeah.
between you and Johnny. for
Yeah,
sure.
I had a chocolate mint stout that James Lalonde helped me out with, and it's over the top. It's a absolute candy beer, and I love to make it. And then Johnny, kind of took a hold of that, and he dumbed it down, and he simplified it into this peppermint stout.
Porter.
I'm sorry, porter. That's fantastic. And one of the troubles you get with peppermint is it can get medicinal, and this is not medicinal at
Mouthwashing,
all.
yeah.
This is fantastic. I think you did a fantastic job with this.
Yeah, you nailed it, man.
Yeah, see, I can say that
Alrighty.
I'm not a big fan of the mint beers at all. I never have been. I mean, a couple of sips is the tops, and I like this. I mean, one
I
pint
think-
would be
I
my
think-
max probably, but I like it enough that I would have a pint
Yeah,
of it.
but
and-
you would say that the peppermint's not over the top.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
'cause
It's
I
like
think when you
usually
get-
it's over the top.
When
All
you get-
mint is over the top.
Yeah, when you get peppermint, a lot of times it starts to taste like mouthwash.
It's nice and refreshing.
It's sort of like any. Okay, here's another example of something why I don't like the mint thing to go with beer, because there's the general characteristic that comes from beer yeast, and we usually when you mix, if you don't have the right other flavors in there from the malts and whatnot, if you mix that with mint, it just does not taste that good. It's not a good flavor,
right.
and like because my
what
wife
you're
often
saying.
picks up. She'll have like, "Can I get some chapstick?" Oh, it's peppermint. What? Damn it! I want to drink a beer. I don't want to be tasting, the peppermint to go with this
Right.
beer, whatever it is, that kind of thing. And it's like this is one of those that all of the gears are working together to make it work out to be a great beer.
Well,
Yeah,
can
so-
I give one of the most constructive, critiques of this beer?
No.
If I
But
may?
go ahead. Yeah, please.
Oh, thanks, James.
All right,
I
I'm just
appreciate you,
making
brother.
Love you, brother.
Like the last peppermint beer that I had, it made me vomit, and this one doesn't. So there you go.
There you go. Cheers. See,
So
that's
Will,
I
I-
feel good about that.
Yeah,
I
Will-
actually love this beer, and it didn't bring any bad memories back for me.
All right, so Will, you said you changed something on our kit recipe. What was? I don't think we ever actually got to that. What did you change?
I changed the amount of time that I steeped the peppermint leaves for
Okay.
after the Whirlpool.
So you left it in
So
there
He
longer.
took the vomit out of it.
yeah, I left it in there for between 6 and 7 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Interesting. I wouldn't.
I think
would
you hit the
expect
extract limit. I
would've-
mean, as far as like he
yeah.
got everything that would have been in there is out of it beyond a certain point of time.
Yeah, because
so.
I would have been afraid that you had got too much peppermint. So maybe he'd already extracted everything that was going to come
That's-
out of it.
When I
So-
do mine, I throw this is before we had peppermint in the shop. I went to
because
I
we
was
were
u-
using tea, peppermint
yeah, I was
tea.
using Celestial Seasoning peppermint tea bags because I'd been to their plant and had learned that the peppermint tea that they sell is 100% peppermint leaves in
Right.
nice little pillow packages. So
Well, that's the way we originally started
Yeah.
brewing this beer.
Yeah. So I throw, I use basically a box of peppermint tea when I make my stout, and I throw a couple in the mash, and it's just kind of, I don't think it really does anything, but to me it
smells nice.
It smells nice, and then I throw a couple in while I'm sparging, and then the rest of it goes in right at the end of the boil, right in the whirlpool.
But I think this is what makes this beer really nice. Is the peppermint taste is really
Yeah.
nice. It's not too much and not over the top. And I think this is you talked about it, Greg, just a little bit, and so did you. That you can really overdo the peppermint in a real hurry.
yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think that it's overdone here at all. I think it's really
any
nice.
mint.
I researched peppermint a lot before I did that peppermint stout. And everything you read in every website that you'll find is don't boil it or you'll get medicinal peppermint. So we didn't, and Johnny didn't, I don't. and you get that wonderful real peppermint flavor without the mouthwashy weirdness.
Oh, Will, did you send us some beers before?
No, we talked to Will before on the phone about.
I know, but I didn't know if he had sent us his actual homebrew before or no.
I don't think so.
No, I hadn't.
No,
this is the first batch of stuff I sent down to y'all.
Speaking of which, we're enjoying y'all sending us beer and showing up
that's
with
awesome.
beer.
And we thoroughly encourage anybody
Yes,
else
please,
to send us
send
beer.
beer.
too.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to learn and evaluate beer, and it even helps you guys as patrons to become better brewers. How long did you say you've been brewing now, man?
I gave it a shot a long time ago, and I brewed for about a year just using the Mr. Beer kits and whatnot.
Sure.
And then I kind of stopped because that stuff tasted like crap, and
Sure.
you know how that goes. But really hardcore brewing at this point, probably about 5 years, and you guys actually helped me transition from extract to all grain, so I've been doing that for
Okay.
about a year now.
Okay.
Good.
Man, your beers are all solid, man. I'm really digging it. So thank you for
appreciate it.
sharing.
Yeah,
Thank
these
you
are
for
great.
sharing.
So not only was Will good enough to send us some homebrew, he also sent us some beer from
Some commercial
the East
beers.
Coast,
and, yeah.
some commercial beer from the East Coast that we can't
Yeah,
get
I've never
over
had
here.
this one.
And this,
And of course they reach my heart because one's an ESB and a couple I described as a mild. So
see, this is the thing. We're gonna talk a little bit about English miles tonight. It's not like a full on style segment, but he sent us a beer that is listed as an English mild that he's hoping to maybe find a way to brew. So we're going to talk about that, but it only could be bought on the East Coast, so we weren't going to be able to get it here, even though they used to be down here.
The CSB is really nice.
so yeah, we just
I
opened
like
opened the ESB. Will now you say this brewery is just up the road from you?
Yeah. So if
Denizens?
Denizens.
Denizens,
They're right
yeah.
down the road. Yeah, they're right down the road in Silver Spring. That part of the cool thing about moving to a new spot is I got a whole crop of new breweries I can go check out now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I happened upon them, and I was like, "Oh, they brew an ESB." And be perfectly honest, wasn't that well acquainted with the English styles. So I gave
Shame.
it a shot. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like it.
Well, my whole family is Scotch and Irish. So
I'm
so,
sorry.
Yeah, Nigel, I'm the other side of that wall. But,
Sorry, dude.
yeah. But we had never really done anything with English beers. I mean, if it comes from the Emerald Isle, I could probably, had probably sampled it by the time I was 15, but
Man,
didn't really know about the English stuff.
I got
you
to
were
tell
late
you,
then.
this is absolutely fantastic.
I think it's great. Nigel's kind of turning his cheek
So
at it.
yeah. If you told me this was a beer, I'd say I love this beer. You call this an ESB, and I'm going to critique the hell out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, as a good English, as an English
a good beer.
It's a great beer to drink.
You wouldn't say this is an English pale ale?
No. Not,
Well,
well,
it's not-
no,
it's not-
hang on. Let me
Maybe
start-
golden.
Let me go back again. Yes, I'd say it's an English pale
It's
ale.
more than golden.
Whether I say it's an ESB,
Well, that's the same thing, though. There's people
No.
that really.
No, this is an American ESB.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's probably the
All right,
best
fair
way to
enough.
describe
This
it.
is an American ESB.
it's a
and
good
they're made
beer.
all over the place, and they're fantastic. It has more
Well,
bitterness. It has less caramel. It has a lot of the characteristics.
Yeah, but ESBs taste different over there
Yeah,
than
but
they do here.
doesn't have the yeast. Well, I don't know.
I'm
It
just
tastes
telling
like
you. I'm just
It doesn't
telling
have the malt character. I
Yeah,
agree.
you're right.
It does not have that.
And it has
that-
American hops in it, apparently.
Yes.
So
And
that's
that's
another
what-
thing.
You see
that-
what you've done, Will?
and that's perfectly fine. This is
You've divided us.
Yeah, well.
Send
Well,
more.
but I would say this, that Nigel, I would say this. This is what this last trip that I went to England. This is what a lot of the beers are kind of tasting like.
because they want to
in
be
England now.
Americans now.
Right. Right.
Oh,
telling
No.
Golly, both of you
Honestly,
want
who
me.
doesn't?
No. And I'm not trying to be a dick.
Wow.
I'm just trying to say that.
They'll be able to shoot through the phone.
I'm trying to say that they're kind of trying to blend a lot of these American characteristics into the English style.
Okay, now again.
Shots fired.
No,
What'd you say?
No. Let me start again. One, we never want to be Americans. Okay.
I didn't
And-
say
and-
you.
Hey,
I
and
just said the beer.
And
Says the guy that's now an American.
And I say we.
But
and-
damn
and
it,
that's-
you are an American now.
And that's not anything to be detrimental. That's just to maintain our own integrity. Secondly, yes, that there is a big movement towards English bitters using American
hops.
Sure.
style hops. I don't know what the hops are in this, so it's difficult.
But they're
to s-
subtle, though, I would say.
right? But it's difficult.
Sure.
So it's difficult to say whether it's a true English beer or what.
But if I had this in England, in the UK,
Current-
today,
currently you
I would not say that this was not
currently
made in
you wouldn't be
England.
surprised.
Yeah, I really would.
But again, it depends on how it's marketed and pushed. Your typical English beers, your Landlord, your Pedigree, your Bass, stuff like that, they're not going to taste like this.
Of course, he throws out the big heavy hitters. I
Well,
mean,
of
come
course,
on.
but they're the ones the traditional. If you want new on the scene,
I'm giving
new,
you shit.
new on the scene beers, yes, they might taste like this.
Yeah, you're right. You're
And,
right.
and don't get me wrong, they're going to be great. They're going to be fantastic. Hey, I brewed a beer with an English bitter with Cascade for a reason.
Those Irish beers that I had that were all American hopped. I mean, they're fantastic. They're
No, and we see the same thing with the American beers. I mean, we see the American Pale Ale that used to all be nothing but citrus. Now it's dank. It's New World hops. It's all this other stuff that's working on. So there's also good stuff there. And
But hey,
I like to give you a hard time a little bit, but on the same time, that deep down in my heart, I'm very close to the English styles, and it's a place that I gravitate very quickly when I'm making beers is making English styles, and this one, like you say, Stubby, it may be what those new fresh brewers are bringing to England, and I love this beer. I could drink pints and pints of this beer until you tell me that it's an ESB, and then I have a purist nature. And you'll see that in just a little bit when we start talking about the farmhouse.
you also have to remember, I did enjoy a West Coast IPA yesterday. So.
Oh,
yes, you did.
communist.
Hey, the one thing I would say though, and Will, I think this is a great beer for sending us. I really think this opens a great debate, and the reason I say that is because one of the things that to me, I think a lot of times ESB is kind of cornered into this everything should taste like this Fuller's ESB.
Yeah, no
and really I think everybody compares ESB to Fuller's ESB, which
Sure.
that is not the epitome of that particular style, but that is the only one we get from the UK that is that style.
Yeah, no. Go grab a Bass, and unfortunately,
but-
it's made here.
yeah.
But no, I disagree with you.
It doesn't Bass doesn't taste here
It
like
doesn't.
it does in the UK.
It doesn't
not
taste the
the
same
same.
here as it does over there, but it's still a decent representation from over here of what you're going to get.
Yeah,
over
but
there.
it doesn't taste anything like
No,
Fuller's ESB.
No, it doesn't. No.
Right?
You can always just go buy Sam Smith Pale, and you'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah, but that's usually old as shit here.
Yeah, but it's still much better than
it's
most of
beautiful.
But man, I think this is a really. I would say, Will, I think this is one of the things that I found really interesting. When I was in UK just a couple of months ago, is that when I went in this one little pub that I went to, and they had all of these beers on cask, and what I found really interesting about it is they had 10 different beers on cask. I mean, like the beer engines and the whole real ale. And I asked the guy, the publican, I was like, how many of these actually have American hops in them now? And he goes, 6 out of the 10.
Yeah,
wow.
that's fair.
And
At
but-
any given
but-
time, that could well be true. Yeah.
But the thing that I would say though is they're not using them the same way that we use them.
we use them subtly.
Yeah, so the
Yes.
English use them very subtly. So I think this is a perfect example of that. I think this is a good example of what they're trying to emulate in
Put it this
in
way.
the UK.
If
Wouldn't
I
you say?
if I lived in Will's house and I could go up the road and get and get this regularly, I'd be very happy,
Yeah.
very happy indeed.
Very happy.
Yeah, I mean
It's a
that's-
great
it's
beer.
a great
It is
beer.
great,
It
yeah.
really is. Is it? a classic example?
Yeah, you're talking
No,
to
definitely
Probably
not.
not.
purists that
Yeah,
you know.
but it's a great beer. And,
But I
You
think-
sucked your thumb with it stuck in those ESBs.
Right.
So.
But I would say that this is what is a pretty classic example of what you're getting in the UK and the new up and coming breweries.
so
Yeah.
it's similar.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say?
It's similar.
I'd agree.
Okay.
All right.
But man,
So-
that's a great beer, man. Thanks for sending that. I think that was a great, interesting example to send us because we don't
Chad.
get anything like that here. So man, cheers for that.
So the next one we got is the Yards Brewing Brawler, which you tell us is described as an English mild from Philadelphia, and you say you think it's on the hoppy side. You are 100% correct.
It does. I would say this is a
I
mild.
stuck my nose in my glass and went, "Whoa, that's too hoppy to be a mild."
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's,
fair warning and disclaimer. The listing there is the Oracle of Truth that is Untapped and the Staff of Total Wine near me.
Oh well, if it's on the
Both tell-
if it's on the internet, it's absolutely
James
correct.
says
then.
no.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
So,
This is not a
so,
mild.
No, it's not a mild.
It's not a mild. No. I mean, if you want to take a mild, take that porter that you have, take all your mint, all your chocolate, and all that stuff out of it, and
you're
make
close.
it at a 3%, and you're a lot closer.
Okay.
You know, that if you're wanting to make a mild, seriously, take your best porter recipe. Just flip the yeast to your SO4 instead of SO5, and make it at a 1038.
Right.
1040, even 1040 is fine to give it a start. But I mean, if you're wanting to make the mild, start there, see how it comes out, and then adjust from there.
You know, one of the funniest things that I've made this recipe 15, 20 times. If you happen to have Jamil's Brewing Classic Styles book, okay, I know.
Yeah,
I understand.
It's a wonderful, wonderful book.
But one of the things that I always used to brew was I'd brew their Southern English brown.
Yeah.
And I would always like, oh my God, this tastes like an English mild. And I'd enter that SOB in competitions as English mild, and I win every time.
Yeah.
Even though it was actually a Southern English brown recipe.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty damn close
Right.
to actual a good English mild recipe is the Southern English brown recipe and Brewing Classic styles.
Yeah, probably so.
That may
Would
also
you-
be down to the judging too.
Yeah.
Between the
No,
two of
that's
you that
true,
are
too.
more familiar with the mild, would you say that when you do something like that, would it come down to, because like with that Southern English, it definitely comes out sweeter. Now with a mild, should it be more dry, but yet have the same malt characteristics that the Southern English that we're talking about would have, with that chocolate and
Well,
roast,
Southern
you know?
English style is not a style anymore.
I know. Well, that's what I'm
But-
saying, but it is in a book that people know.
But
yeah.
what I'll and I haven't looked at that recipe, but I have listened to his podcast on it, and that recipe is designed for a malt. It's not designed for a Southern English brown. If you're wanting to make a Southern English brown, it's in the historicals now. It's a sweet beer. I mean,
Right.
literally, you add sugar.
Yeah, but that one is a
Post-fermentation.
great mild.
Sweet.
Sweet,
make it
low
sweet.
ABV beer.
Yeah, but
But a mild, on the other hand, I've had more that I felt would qualify more as dry as compared to have that
they
sweet
should
characteristic.
be between the.
A mild is a pretty sweet beer.
It's still.
I mean, BJCP put
But-
it as 1008 to 1013.
But it's pretty tannic, though. I think that tannic,
Yeah.
that
The,
tannic
the,
flavor.
the roast comes through a little
Yeah.
bit.
Maybe that's
But-
what I'm
kinda
thinking
dries
of.
it
now.
out.
But again, the roast can be coffee and chocolate.
Yeah,
It could be
absolutely.
toffee.
correct.
You
Should
know,
be.
I mean, it can be a variety of different ways that it comes over, but it doesn't necessarily. You know, a sweet. Sorry, let me start again. A dry beer isn't in style.
No, and it shouldn't. I mean, it's that mild kind of sits between a really low gravity porter and a brown ale. It kind of sits in the middle because you've drawn it down so much. You're not getting as much roast, so the porter characteristics are not coming out as strong. But yet that, like you're saying, Greg, that roast malt is adding a note of dryness to it. So,
Right. See, that's something that I think that I might have picked up more with when I've had miles from people is a medium sort of body with that dry edge that sort of, and I think it would be the tannic character with less of the sweetness, more so than, say, because I've made that Southern English brown and I've had a couple others before, and I remember how sweet they were typically because they seemed like that's kind of geared towards what that was, whereas like a mild was drier than that.
So there's and I can't remember if it's a BYO or if it's a Zymergy. I think it's Zymergy that did a whole write-up on the Southern English brown and really did a good job with it and kind of compared it to Dr. Pepper, being that because that style was such a sweet beer and it was, like I said, it was literally sweetened after fermentation in the keg. As a home brewer, I would do it with lactose, but
I've done one like that, and it was people love that. But with coffee added,
added a simple syrup to it. I mean,
so poor planning on my part, but I just finished a mild, and it's a recipe that's just won the GABF twice actually.
Oh yeah.
And so I was hoping to have that with me tonight, but poor planning on my part meant that wasn't available. But
you son of a bitch.
Yeah, that's not the first time.
So what's this Magic Hat?
So yeah, we just opened up the second.
Is that supposed to be a mild?
Magic Hat Barroom Hero. So
this is what started our conversation with Will. He was talking about this beer, and if we could get it, maybe we could talk about it. And they qualify this as a mild, I think, on Untapped and whatnot. To me, this actually seems more like a Southern English brown.
So my first question is: any of you guys ever been to Magic Hat?
No.
Holy cow, go. It is an absolutely fun experience.
You remember when we used to get them, and then you could go to other states and get more variety from them? I haven't seen that in a while.
So. And for
they
a while,
like fancy gummy bears and cookies?
Yeah, for a while they got really bad. I mean,
Mike is not here right now, so.
I went about 3 years ago, and the experience, the brewery is a lot of fun, like you would expect. It's a little wild, a little psychedelic. But it's a lot of fun. It's an enjoyable place to go if you're ever up in Vermont. I mean, it's in Burlington, so you have to be in Burlington for a reason because it's a long ways out of the way from anywhere. But if you get a chance to go, so they call this a mild, right?
It looks more like a mild than the last beer.
Yeah, and I think it. I feel like it hits that southern part with the sweetness.
You know what's amazing to me? I don't like. I think the flavor's okay. I do not like the aroma. It's like that whole geraniol estery aroma that I'm not a fan of.
Not getting as much of it this time. I'm getting more of the malt aromas like this.
To me, it's like rose petals and weirdness. I don't know.
Describe weirdness.
Yeah, describe weirdness.
It's like, you went down the rabbit hole.
Oh no, that's not weird. That's just strange.
So I disagree.
Okay. Smells.
You don't. Gotcha. You like that smell?
No, I really like this beer.
Okay, so
I think this is a easy drinker.
Here's what's funny. This smells exactly the same as the beer that you gave us earlier, Nigel.
Yeah, but that was a U.S. lager.
It smells exactly the same to me.
See, I don't get that.
I like
this one.
I
get mostly the malt
I get
aroma.
The same aroma out of this.
I think your smell.
I mean, if there's an aroma, it's the malt.
Maybe, but I'm just telling you.
I get a little hop in the background of the aroma, but it's to me it's nondescript, mostly malt.
So you wanting to make this, Will?
I am. That honestly could be my everyday after work beer.
All right.
Based on my sampling.
So 7 pounds of just a good old pale malt. I'd use an English pale malt. I use a quarter pound of Crystal 60. One of my tricks is I like to use the Cara wheat. I really like Cara wheat and what it does. It adds a little sweetness there. So I'd add about a quarter pound of that and about a half a pound of a chocolate. I'd stay away from roast barley. Just because you don't want to darken it up too much. I'd rather use a chocolate that has a little sweetness there. And then you're gonna try to get your bitterness in to where it's relatively low, but firm enough to match a 1038 beer. So wherever that base malt gets you at 1038, Start with that with the, like I said, a quarter pound of a Crystal 60, half pound of a chocolate, and see where that comes in. I think that'll get you pretty darn close.
You don't think any
Use an SO4 on this guy.
Okay.
I definitely use the dry yeast because I wanted to dry out and have enough there. And then I really like what that yeast does. And then, like I said, just enough hops at the beginning. You might want to throw a pinch at the end, and we're talking a quarter of an ounce at most of an EKG. If you're going to put anything late, only put EKGs. Don't put anything else. But overall, what I would prefer to do is to add a blend of EKGs and a little bit of Fuggles at 60. Use low alpha so that way you use a lot of them. Now in this beer, you're probably only using about a half to 3/4 of an ounce. But blend those 50-50 and let it ride. Ferment it low too, so keep it down 62, 60 degrees.
Yeah.
Especially with the SO4, you can go that low. I'm a religious fan of the 63 mark, but with SO4, it'll go a little lower.
SOB, I'm at 64.
Now,
63.
No,
is the
64 is what it's at.
It's the magic
James,
is that
number.
Celsius?
Yes.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah, Celsius.
Do you think that this okay, when you said 60, you don't think like any 80, either American or maybe a British 77 type of, or whatever, like
Me personally, no. I'm
like
down
go with a, do you think you should use an American crystal or a British crystal in this?
No, I don't think that matters because you only put about a quarter
British
of
crystal.
a pound. So.
Because I feel like I get more crystal than I get any kind of
Caramel,
chocolate
yeah.
or whatever out of
Yeah.
this specific beer.
Right.
You
So
know?
so then I think the question is, would you say chocolate or power chocolate? Now that would obviously depend on whether you want a bit of roast or a little bit of chocolate
Yeah.
in the beer, right?
I want to say
Well,
options
you
here,
might
yeah.
go. You might go a little bit heavier crystal if you're going to go power chocolate.
Because I get more crystal than I get a lot of crystal, but it could
I
also
think-
be like a base malt, like Maris Otter, which definitely adds some more
Yeah.
flavor. You
Depth
know, what I
to
mean, I
it,
don't know.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I would say this: always err on this smaller era. Any
Sure.
kind of chocolate,
Right. Yeah. Keep it low.
smaller amount.
man. I'm almost gotten to the point to where I don't like to use chocolate. Where if I'm going to use chocolate, I use a pale chocolate in place of it. And the only reason I say that is because, man, chocolate malt truly to me is the harshest malt you can use in your grain bill.
Well, and that's a question I wanted to ask James. If you've looked at the Gordon Strong, his new book from, honestly now it's
Is
like
that the
2
one you
years
stole
ago.
from me?
You have back now. In the Gordon Strong book, all the dark malts go in at Vorloff. He doesn't do any of his recipes. He doesn't do anything mashed. What do you think about that? And the philosophy is it cuts down on that harsh bitterness and the acidity.
So yeah, whatever.
Do you, do
For
you
a
think
beer
that's
like
a gimmick?
this, so for a low ABV beer, especially, I would
Do you
think
think
that would make a difference.
I mean, do you think it's gimmicky, or do you think there's any science behind that?
I don't know. I don't. I mean, I'm not going to question what he's doing. I mean, it's working for him on that. I personally know. I just put it in the whole thing.
Just go for it.
And as we're talking, and a good rule, by the way, 4 ounces of a chocolate malt will give you a nice red. And when I look at this beer, the more I look at it, it's lighter. So I think a half a pound of chocolate's too much on it.
Yeah,
so
very
going,
much so.
Going down, and then we're
Quarter.
we're going down to 1038 beer. So a quarter and a quarter, and then let it fly and see what it does. I know that a lot of times when somebody's going to make an Irish red, you just put a quarter of a pound of a chocolate malt.
That's probably too much.
and-
I would
and
say
it just-
2
it
ounces.
just
2
adds
ounces.
red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A quarter gets you red. I mean, I've seen religiously on a 5-gallon batch, quarter will get
A
you
lot
red.
of the
But there's some better
steam beers have
like you said,
2 ounces.
Stevie, there's some better, malted, roasted malts. The better chocolates than your old fashioned chocolates.
Well,
and so
and
give
I
that a
think-
try.
And I was talking. Who was it that we interviewed out in HC a couple years ago? It was. It wasn't Gordon Strong. It was
Randy Mosier?
Yeah, Randy Mosier. And that was one of the things that I took away from one of his the interviews that we did with him. And the one of the things that really stuck in my craw was he was talking about chocolate malt and how harsh it is. And I mean, he just kept reiterating, chocolate malt is harsh. You could put more roasted barley in your recipe than chocolate. You could put twice as much, roasted barley than you do the chocolate malt, and you would never notice a difference. But if you put double the amount of chocolate, it's going to ruin your beer.
Well, I can support that. I know that even in my stouts, I never put more than a half pound per 5.
Right.
And I think it works well.
It's just you get that really harsh,
But
acrid note from the chocolate malt.
4 ounces in a 5-gallon batch is next to nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
hey, Will.
Yep.
Do you do water additions at all?
Not currently.
Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. Come up with a recipe based on what we've said today. Okay. Send it to me. I'll brew it as well, and let's reconvene and let's do an experiment from what you think you perceive from tonight with this beer. I'll do a version of it, and another option. And I know James.
I'll throw in too.
James likes SO4 stuff. My suggestion would be Mangrove Jacket Empire Ale.
Yeah.
But
Good for dark.
yeah, good for dark English beers. Now again,
and I
less
like
attenuative.
the Liberty Bell.
yeah, and,
Or the
and
Newcastle
Mike likes-
Dark. Oh, wait a
Yeah,
minute. That's not
Either way, let's come up with 2 or 3 different versions of the beer, and
Yeah,
and let's
I
see-
think that's
see
a
what
great
we
idea.
think.
I think that's a great idea. And we'll send
Sounds
you.
good.
We'll
And
send you our
I'll drink 'em.
versions.
And James will drink them, and he'll tell us which one's a
Yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent.
But I would say, Will, thank you so much for all these beers, man.
Yeah,
I think I
definitely.
think this was a
It's
great
awesome.
talking
They were
points.
great beers. They were really good.
And I got to tell you, man, this ESB to me was.
I really like that. Yeah.
Out of all the pro beers you sent, man, that
Nah,
was
see, I love his
fantastic.
Magic Hat. I
You
love
did?
the
Magic
shit out
Hat's
of his
good.
Magic Hat.
Yeah, I like it's a good beer, Will.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Awesome, but man,
right.
thank you so much for being a patron, because it's guys like you that help us keep the show going. And I mean,
Especially when we can do this too.
yeah, because I think it's a symbiotic relationship where we can help you guys and you guys help us. So
That sounds a little
man,
dirty.
man, cheers! I know you've been a patron for a long time, and we really appreciate you.
symbiotic.
What?
And I know
got
we're keeping you up
research
late too.
symbiotic.
So.
Symbiotic.
We're cutting in on your thanks and praise to the patrons. You keep doing that.
Yeah.
And, it keeps bringing the show here.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
It makes it enjoyable for all of us to
But
do.
man, dude, you're brewing some great fucking beer, dude. So keep it out,
Really
man.
Great
Oops,
F-bomb
I said
beer.
the F-bomb. Sorry, but
Like
but
we
no,
edit
man,
that out
you-
anymore.
You're doing a great you're doing a great job, man, and we really appreciate it. And any way we can help you out, just let us know.
Alrighty, I appreciate it, guys.
Well, Will,
And,
Thanks, man.
thanks
and
for
if you're
calling
ever
in
here in
tonight.
Texas,
Come by.
Come
Give
by,
us-
see
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
get some homies a holler. We'll take you out and show you the sites.
Absolutely.
There are many.
Yeah, I'm gonna take you up on that, because I might be down in the Killeen, Texas area here. In the
Well, that's
next
not
few
that far,
months.
dude.
No,
That's
let
less.
it- let
That's
us
like
know.
an hour
You gotta
and
take a
15,
plane to get there. Shit.
something like that.
Remember,
Hour and a
this is
half.
Texas, dude.
Yeah.
It's not that far.
Hour and a half,
Let
maybe.
us know, Will, and let me
Yeah.
know that recipe if you put something together. And
Yeah.
again, if you want a bit of advice or a bit of interaction with that recipe, let me know. We'll come up with something. We'll brew it, and we'll have multiple versions of it here on the show.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Awesome, fantastic. Thanks, Will.
Alrighty,
Thank
Have
you.
a good one,
Appreciate
dude.
it.
Happy New Year.
Take care.
Cheers.
and
Cheers.
y'all catch you later. All right, bye.
All right, guys. So
Yeah,
that's,
man.
that's a good point for a break, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think so.
Fantastic, but
Yeah.
but that's ultimately, guys. Here's the thing that I really want to point out, and stuff like this is that guys like Will really help us be better, podcasters, and help us help you brew better beer.
Agreed.
Because when these guys send us beers that they may be interested in, and that we may be able to give them feedback on, or they send us their homebrew, that we can help everybody that's listening out there and become and help them become better brewers. Because I think at the end of the game, that's what our job here is.
That is exactly the.
Well,
man,
and,
I
we're
mean,
only exposed to what we get around here, and you've got to send us beer. You've got to you know,
Well,
we
like with
only
this
know,
one, Will contacted me and said, "I've got this beer I really like. Maybe you guys could try it on the air and tell me if
Yeah.
there's a way to brew it." And then it turned into what we started talking about with the miles and
Yeah.
in
And-
general sense of
I mean,
like we
even
can't get
having-
this. So.
Even having the apples from North Carolina. That was
Well, yeah, I mean, there's going to be potentially hundreds of people that have their local beer that they want to brew. That, yeah, send it to us. Let us know. Let's try it.
Yeah, we like to
let's-
reverse engineer.
Let's have some fun with that.
Dude, this beer bacon is just amazing.
I know it's great. I want beer.
Well,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, here's the honest God truth. You know, we are not in any shortage of beer here. Honest to God, because all of our local breweries load us up plenty, and
I mean, flats of beer in weekly.
But the difference is when somebody says, "Hey, I'm in North Carolina, or I'm in Maine, or I'm in California, or Utah, or whatever, and I have this beer that I really like, and you know, help me break it down." Hopefully, we can help you guys out there do that, or at least if you have a homebrew and especially if you're a patron, we're going to go above and beyond to try to help you break your beers down and maybe help you evaluate them. And because I think a lot of the times that we take for granted, because we live in a big metropolitan area, that we do have big homebrew clubs where, like, you know, for example, we got James
Grand
Lalonde
Master
here. We got
Wizard Judge.
we've got somebody like James
resources
here.
Like James,
Yeah, that we can take our brew to and go, hey, you know, taste this, evaluate, help me make my beer better. But a lot of people out there don't have those resources. They're in smaller, they're maybe not in a metropolitan area, but they still really like beer. They really like craft beer. They like to really get involved and stuff. So this is where we can help a lot of people that don't have those resources like we do, you know, locally. So, I mean, I think to me, I think this is a great way to make help people out.
No, I agree with you, and I think it's a lot of fun, and you know, I hope Will was sitting at his house and had these same beers and are drinking them as we're talking to him.
Yeah.
And if he wasn't, shame on you, Will. Next time, make sure you're doing that. But
Damn it, Will.
But it's hard, you know. It's hard to do something of this
Right.
nature, and everybody else tried the beers while we're drinking them. But especially when we're trying to talk to somebody about their own beers, and one of the things that you'll always get out of everybody on this show, and I'm speaking for y'all, but I know it's true. You're going to give the honest opinion.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
If there's something's off, there's something's off. Life goes on. The first I tried that ESB, no, I didn't like it. Then it came around on me just because I had a idea in my
Have
mind
some
of
more.
what I expected. I'm gonna have some more. Hang on.
I think it's
But
freaking fantastic.
it is a lot of
ESB.
fun, and it's hard. And if you are in a small area, sometimes it's a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
We have that, like I said, we have that privilege. We've got a big club here. We can get together and we can try different beers and see what other people
Yeah,
have.
and I think that's a big point that we're trying to make, and you know, we make this point a lot, is that, you know, hey man, you know, not everybody has the ability that are in big cities that have a big homebrew club, but if you do, you do have a homebrew club locally, join it, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because
about
I think your beers are gonna improve by being able to share them, even though you may not like your feedback, or you do like the feedback, or whatever. I think there's some validity to anything that somebody says to you, even though you may or may not like it.
Yeah.
Plus, you meet a bunch of crazy assholes,
Yeah, you know, like
Crazy.
like Dr.
That too.
Death.
Well, you know, and then
or the people in this room.
there's something about it. I mean,
Is he crazy or an ass? No.
if you come
Both.
to me, I'm a purist, and so if you come to me with the style, I'm gonna go to the style.
Amen.
But yet, if you say, hey, it sits between these two, I really enjoy drinking this. My house beer. You know,
Would you say you like
it's
to
a-
jerk your house beer?
It's my house beer. I like to jerk my house beer, but don't worry about all that.
I jerk
He
my
likes
house
to
beer
jerk
too,
his
Jimmy.
house.
Where else?
It's
Where
all
else
good.
can you jerk?
You know, if you told me this what was it? ESB was an American
Gone off the
ESB.
rail.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeehaw.
Yeah, anyway, let's
take a break.
Let's take a break.
hope you guys enjoyed the first half, and now we're going to the second half.
We'll be back.
Yeah.
That was